If only the husband knew what his quiet wife hides under the bed, a folk tale from the village of Umudike. Listen well, because what I am about to tell you is not the kind of story you forget when morning comes. It begins deep in the night, the kind where even the crickets hold their breath. In the village of Umudi, inside a small clay hut, a man named Odira woke to a strange feeling. The ground beneath him was moving, not shaking, not trembling, breathing, like a chest rising and falling below the earth. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and told himself it was a dream. But then he heard it, a low, soft pulse coming from directly under the bed. He swung his legs to the floor and bent down to look. His wife, Chizum, appeared from the shadows like smoke. She stepped between him and the bed with her arms wide, her voice barely a whisper. "Do not come closer." Odira stared at her. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were wide and wet with something that looked like fear, but not fear for herself. Fear for him. He could not understand that yet. Then the bed lifted, just slightly, as if something beneath had taken one slow, deep breath. And Odira's blood ran cold. Odira was not a patient man. In Umudike, he was known as someone who asked once and expected answers immediately. So when his wife stood before him in the dark with her arms wide and her mouth shut tight, his fear hardened quickly into fury. He stepped back and crossed his arms. "Chizum," he said, low and firm. "What is under that bed?" She said nothing. She only shook her head. He laughed, the short, bitter laugh of a man who has lost his patience completely. "You are hiding something in my house, in my bed, under my roof." He pointed at her. "Is it a man? Have you brought shame inside these walls?" She closed her eyes. "Odira, please. It is not what you think. Then explain it. Tell me what it is." Silence. She pressed her lips together and looked at the floor. His jaw tightened. He walked to the doorway, then turned back one final time. "I will not sleep here tonight, but I swear to you on my father's bones, tomorrow when the sun rises, I will uncover everything in this house." He walked out. The door swung shut behind him, and beneath the bed something sighed. By morning the village already knew. That is how Umudike worked. Walls were thin, ears were sharp, and a man storming out of his home at midnight did not go unnoticed. Old Mom Nkechi next door had heard everything. She told her daughter, who told 3 women at the well. By midday, half the village was whispering. "Strange sounds from Odira's house again. You did not hear it last week? Something moving beneath the floor at night. Chizum has always been too quiet. A woman that still is hiding something." One man, Ugochukwu, who had a long tongue and short judgment, claimed he had seen a shadow leave their compound in the night. Not a person, a shadow. Moving completely on its own. The whispers eventually reached Chief Ichi Anwu, the eldest man in the village, the one they called the keeper of order. He sat under his ukwa tree and listened to everything brought to him. His face showed nothing. He folded his hands and said simply, "Bring Odira to me." No one dared ask why. When the chief summoned, the village obeyed without question. And somewhere inside her hut, Chizum sat beside the bed, pressed her hand flat against the ground, and whispered words no one else was meant to hear. To understand what Chizum was hiding, you must go back. Back before the marriage, before the hut in Umudike. Back to the year the rain simply forgot to come. That year the land cracked like old pottery. Streams dried to dust. Farms gave nothing. Not yam, not cassava, not even bitter leaves. The people of Umudi called it the silent season, and the name fit. Children stopped crying from hunger because crying took strength they no longer had. Chizum was 17 then, eldest daughter of a widow named Ada. There were 4 younger children at home. Her mother had sold everything worth selling, her wrapper cloths, her market pots, her silver wedding earrings. Still the family went to bed hungry. Night after night, Chizum lay on her thin mat, listening to her siblings in the dark. Small sounds, weak sounds, sounds that said they were fading. She prayed until her lips went dry. She begged neighbors who had nothing to give. And then one evening, as the sun disappeared behind empty hills, a voice reached her. Not from the village, not from any human mouth. It came from the old forest the elders called Ojinu. It called her name twice. The elders had a saying about Ojindu. It does not call to those it wants to harm. It calls those it has chosen. But being chosen, they warned, was not the same as being blessed. Chizum walked into that forest as the last light died. The trees were ancient, their roots rising like the arms of sleeping giants. She followed the voice to a clearing where a faint glow rose from the soil like the memory of fire. A figure sat there, no fixed shape, shifting between an old woman wrapped in bark and a column of slow smoke. But its eyes were steady and very old. "You are hungry," it said. Not a question. Chizum nodded. The figure extended a small dark bundle, wrapped in river leaves. "Take this. Keep it close. Keep it hidden always. Never let another eye fall upon it. If it stays unseen, it will provide for you. But if it is ever uncovered, what it is owed will be collected from the one who uncovers it. Do you accept?" Chizum thought of her siblings, their thin arms, their quiet cries. She reached out, she took it, and in doing so she sealed a fate she could not yet see. She walked home with the bundle pressed against her chest. It was warm, far warmer than it had any right to be, and it shifted faintly, like a small sleeping animal. When she placed it beneath her sleeping mat, warmth spread across the floor like a quiet breath. The next morning she woke to find food. Not much, just enough. A small heap of yam, a cup of palm oil, a piece of dried fish. Her mother found it and wept with joy. Certain neighbors had taken pity. Chizum said nothing. She let her mother believe what she needed to believe. The next night, more food appeared, and the night after that. Quietly, steadily, the bundle provided. Her siblings grew stronger. Color returned to their faces. Her mother stopped counting the empty days, and Chizum carried her secret the way she carried everything, silently and completely alone. Weeks passed. The rains returned. The farm slowly recovered, but the bundle never left her side. Always beneath, wherever she slept. Always warm. Always breathing its soft, steady breath. And sometimes at night, in the deepest dark, it whispered. Not words exactly. More like the sound a river makes when it knows something the land does not. 2 years after the silent season, Chizum married Odira. Her mother was glad. He was steady and strong, a man who worked hard and demanded little. The bride price was paid, the wine carried with both hands, and the village celebrated. Chizum smiled through all of it. But beneath her joy lived a thread of worry, thin as a crack in clay. The bundle had to come with her. She could not leave it. On the night before she left her mother's house, she tucked it into the bottom of her wooden box, under her marriage cloth. She whispered to it as she worked. "We are moving now. Please be still." In Odira's home, she slid it beneath their bed the first night, pushing it far against the wall. Odira was already asleep. She pressed her palm flat to the floor. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "Please." But that first night, their very first as husband and wife, the bed creaked, not from their weight, a slow, heavy creak with no explanation. Odira stirred. Chizum lay completely still and stared at the ceiling, her heart pressing hard against her ribs, wondering how long she could carry this without breaking. 3 months into the marriage, the warning came. Chizum was deep in sleep when the dream arrived, but it did not feel like any ordinary dream. She stood in the Ojindu clearing on solid ground, breathing real air. The spirit was already there, its shape shifting between smoke and bark. "You moved it," it said. Its voice was calm the way a river is calm, still on top, powerful underneath. "I had no choice," Chizum said. "I married, I know," the spirit answered. "But hear me. The gift is bound by silence. If your husband's eyes fall upon it, if any eye outside this agreement sees it, the debt will leave you and find him. What will happen? It will take from the inside, his pride first, then his name, then his voice." Chizum pressed both hands to her mouth. "Then I will keep it hidden always, I swear it." The spirit said nothing more. The dream broke. She woke to the bed shaking, sharp and violent like a fist hitting a locked door. She gripped the mattress and held on until the shaking stopped. Her hands trembled. But she had made her promise. She would keep it no matter the cost. Odira was not suspicious by nature, but he was a proud man, and pride, left without answers for too long, curls into something much darker. A month passed. Then 2. He began noticing things. The way Chizum always checked beneath the bed before lying down, the way she knelt beside it each morning with her lips moving quietly, the way she flinched if he reached toward that side of the room. He told himself she was particular about prayer. That old wood settles at night. But one evening the sounds would not let him explain them away. He waited until Chizum's breathing slowed and deepened, then he pressed his ear flat against the floor. The breathing below was real, steady, separate from everything above it. Not the house, not the wind, something alive, resting just beneath the boards. He sat up in the dark with his heart hammering. He looked at his wife lying there, so peaceful, so still, so full of things she would not share. He made himself a promise in that darkness. No more asking, no more waiting. He would find the truth for himself. And when he did, nothing in that hut would be able to stop him. Chizum went to see the healer before Odira ever went to the chief. She had managed the secret alone for years and told herself she could manage it longer. But the nights were changing. The breathing beneath the bed had grown deeper, more restless. The warmth it gave off felt thick now, pressing, like the heavy air that builds before a storm. She wrapped herself in a plain cloth before dawn and walked to where old Uloma lived alone at the village's far edge. Uloma was known as the woman who still understood the language of spirits. She was grinding paper when Chizum arrived and did not look up. "I have been expecting you," she said. Chizum sat and told her everything from the beginning. When she finished, the old woman was quiet. Then she sighed, the slow sigh of someone who has held hard knowledge for many years. "The gift is growing," Uloma said. Chizum leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It has lived in your house long enough to take root. The longer it stays hidden, the larger it grows. The larger it grows, the more it wants to be seen." She looked at Chizum steadily. "Restless gifts always seek the light. Return it to the forest." "You are running out of time, my daughter." Market day came, and with it the day Chizum had been quietly dreading. She moved through the stalls as she always did, letting the crowd noise wrap around her like cover. She had barely reached the second row of sellers when she heard her name called out, loudly, deliberately, with an edge meant to be heard by everyone nearby. "Chizum, wife of Odira." She turned. Ugachukwu stood in the center of the path with two men, pointing at her. "You people keep asking why Odira's house makes strange sounds at night? Ask this woman. She is carrying something dark into that home." Heads turned. The market stilled. "She practices darkness," he continued, his voice growing bolder with each face that turned his way. "Everyone on that road has heard it. I saw shadows moving in their compound myself." Chizum stood still and let the stares fall on her like stones. She found Odira at the edge of the circle. He was watching. He met her eyes for one moment, and then, without a single word, he looked away. His silence, that one deliberate turning away, cut deeper than any accusation could have. She stood alone in that circle of eyes and held herself together without flinching. Odira came home before dark that same evening. Chizum was tending the fire when she heard his footsteps. But he did not come in hard or swinging words. He sat on the low bench by the door, put his elbows on his knees and looked at the ground. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with work. "Chizum," he said quietly, "tell me there's an end to this." She studied his face. For one long moment she almost said everything. The forest, the bundle, the spirit's condition. The words rose to her tongue and stopped. Instead she said, "Give me a few more days. I have a plan. I will return what should never have been brought here." He looked at her and then nodded slowly, not with trust but with the thin willingness of a man who has run out of other choices. They ate together that night in quiet, a fragile quiet, but a real one. Beneath the floor, the breathing slowed as though it understood the peace being offered. The hut was still, but before midnight, a sharp crack cut the silence. The bed frame splitting clean in two, as though something beneath had simply outgrown the space it was given. After the bed broke, the pretending ended. Chizum moved her mat to the floor against the far wall. They moved through the hut like two people sharing a canoe in rough water, careful not to tip it. But the thing beneath the mat was no longer what it had been. Chizum could feel it when she pressed her palm to the ground each morning. It had grown. Where once it fit beneath one hand, it now stretched wide across the floor. The warmth it gave off had changed too, thick and heavy, like pressure building before a storm. At night it turned. Slowly, deliberately, like something pulling itself awake. And she noticed something else. Whenever Odira's voice rose, even over something small, the thing pressed upward, as if his anger was food. She said nothing to him about this. But one night, as she lay near sleep, the mat at the far corner lifted. Moonlight slipped through the shutter gap. She watched a shape press slowly upward from beneath, wide and flat, like the palm of a hand. It held there for 3 full seconds, then sank quietly back. Chizum lay in the dark and did not sleep again. Ugochukwu found Odira at the palm wine bench behind Mama Akenta's stall. He sat down beside him like an old friend settling in for a quiet evening, ordered a second cup without asking, and began to speak softly. "I say this only because I respect you," he started. Odira glanced at him. Ugochukwu leaned in. "That thing in your home is not sickness, and it is not prayers. What your wife keeps under that bed came from outside. The whole village can feel it. They call you the man who sleeps above a curse and does not know it." Odira's jaw tightened. Ugochukwu continued, "If I were you, I would not wait for her to explain anything. I would take it before the chief and elders. Bring the bed, bring the mat, uncover it in front of everyone so no one can twist the story afterward." Odira was quiet for a long moment. He thought of the cracked bed, the breathing in the floor, his name said with pity at the market. "Arrange it," he said at last. Ugochukwu did not rush to smile. He simply nodded and ordered 2 more cups. He had been waiting a long time for those 2 words. Nobody sent for the village. They came themselves. By the time the moon sat high over Umudike, nearly 20 people stood outside Odira's compound in the dark, quiet, and waiting. They had the particular stillness of people who want to witness something, but would deny wanting it if asked. They did not wait long. The sounds came before midnight. First the breathing, pressing up through the clay floor and thin walls until those standing nearest felt it in the soles of their feet. Then something like voices. Not words, more like the sound water makes running over smooth stones, rising and falling. One woman stepped back from the wall. "It is speaking," she said softly. No one argued. Then the ground cracked. A single sharp sound, like a knuckle snapping. Every person felt it rise through their feet and settle in their chests. Near the base of the hut wall, a thin line appeared and widened just enough to breathe out a smell. Not rotten, not foul, old, older than anything with a name. The crowd stepped back as one body. And inside the hut, Chizum sat with her eyes shut, speaking without sound, asking for one more night. She did not yet know she had already run out of time. She did not get her night. The spirit came before dawn. Not in a dream, but into the waking air while Chizum sat upright on her mat. The candle flame bent sideways with no wind. The air changed the way water changes before a deep current passes through. Then the voice came from every direction. "You have waited past the time allowed." Chizum pressed her palms together. "I was going to return it. I was preparing. I still can." The voice answered without rising. "The window for returning it has closed." Chizum felt cold move through her before the full meaning landed. What has closed? The agreement has expanded. What you carried alone, you no longer carry alone. No, Chizum breathed. The debt now belongs to the household, not the keeper only. He has done nothing. He reaches for it with his mind every night, with suspicion, with anger. In this forest's law, that reaching counts as touching. The candle flames straightened. "One final word," the spirit said, already pulling away. "If he uncovers it before all, it will take what it is owed from him, not from you." Then it was gone. Beneath the mat, the breathing swelled louder than Chizum had ever heard. Odira made the announcement the next morning. He stood before the chief's compound with Ugochukwu at his side and 3 men behind him as witnesses. He said his wife had kept an unclean thing hidden in their home since before their marriage. He had tried to resolve it quietly and been refused. He now wanted the matter brought before the full village, the chief, the elders, everyone, so truth could be seen by all. Chief Ichianwu listened without expression, then nodded. "The gathering will be held at sunset. 3 days from now." Chizum heard the news before the morning was old. A neighbor's child playing near the chief's fence carried the word without knowing its weight. Chizum sat on the bench outside and pressed both hands flat on her thighs. She was past trembling. She looked at the path that turned left toward the forest, the same path she had walked the night the spirit first called her name. Then she rose and went to find Odira. She stood before him and said, very quietly, "If you go through with this, everything will end. Not a threat, not a plea. Just a truth stated plainly." He looked at her. She saw the wall behind his eyes. He had decided already. He did not change his mind. The morning before the gathering, Chizum rose long before first light. She reached beneath the mat and lifted the bundle for the first time since her wedding night. It was heavy now, far heavier than the night the spirit placed it in her hands, and it pulsed against her palms with warmth that felt less like comfort and more like warning. She wrapped it in old cloth, tied it with root fiber, and walked out while the sky was still dark. The forest path was familiar. The trees pulled her inward the same way they had years ago, the air softening between them. She walked to the clearing, the curved route, the mossy floor. She set the bundle in the center and stepped back. "I am returning this," she said aloud. "I give back what was given." She waited. The earth beneath the bundle shifted, the way water shifts when something large moves below the surface, and the bundle sank quietly into the ground. Chizum exhaled completely. Then she heard it. The spirit's voice, calm and final as a door closing. "It is too late," it said. "He has already made his claim." She stood in the clearing with empty hands and understood. She had come too late. She came back to find Odira in the compound with Ugochukwu and 3 witnesses. They had come to make sure she did not disappear before the gathering. She walked past them without slowing and went inside. She sat on her mat and pressed both hands flat on the floor where the bundle had rested for so many years. The ground was cool, completely still. For the first time since her wedding night, nothing breathed beneath her. It was gone. And yet the house felt no lighter. Returning the bundle could not take back what the spirit had already moved. The debt had left the earth and entered the walls, woven in the way smoke works into old cloth. You could not carry it out. When Odira came through the door, she was still sitting on the floor. He looked at her with the expression of a man whose decision is fully made. "Tomorrow at sunset," he said, "you will come." She looked up at him. There was no anger left in her face, no fear either. She had set down every feeling not needed and kept only what was true. "You have chosen," she said quietly. "Not an accusation, just plain fact." He said nothing and walked out. She sat alone in the empty hut and breathed. 4 men carried the mat and broken bed frame from the hut to the square and set them in the open center. The crowd pressed slightly inward, then pulled itself back. Something in the air had changed. A weight sitting behind the eyes, a pressure in the soft place below the throat. Chizum stood at the crowd's edge. She did not move. Odira crouched beside the mat. He looked up once at the chief, who gave a single nod. He gripped the mat's edge with both hands and lifted it. The square went silent in a way a crowd of that size should not be able to go silent. Not the silence of nothing happening, the silence of everything happening at once and no one able to speak. What came from beneath the mat had no body in the way living things have bodies. It rose the way a shadow rises when the light shifts, slowly filling the space, taking the shape of whatever it needed to be. It was dark in a way having nothing to do with the absence of light. It turned. The whole presence turned directly toward Odira, and then it spoke his name from inside his own chest. The elders did not move from their chairs. Men who have lived long past fear understand that running rarely changes the ending. Chief Ichi Anwu sat with his hands on his knees and watched with the stillness of a man reading something he always suspected was true. The presence moved through the square like a tide, not crashing, not hurrying, steady the way deep water is always steady. Where it passed, people felt cold that had nothing to do with evening air. The cold of being looked at from the inside, of having private things held to a light you did not choose. It came to rest beside Odira. Chizum walked forward through the crowd and placed herself between her husband and the spirit, the same as that very first night. "Tell them what you are," she said. The spirit answered in the voice that lived inside every chest. "I am not evil. I am result. I grew on this woman's silence. Then I grew larger on his suspicion. On the fury he fed me every night he chose not to trust. He reached for me with his mind before his hands moved. In this forest's law, that reaching was claiming. I belonged to what claimed me." Chizum turned to face Odira. He was on his knees in the dirt, not from weakness but from something pressing down that he could not name. She looked at him with clear, dry eyes, not angry, not satisfied. "The way you look at someone you have loved through something painful and long. I was not hiding it from you," she said. Her voice carried easily across the silent square. "I was hiding it for you." She stepped closer. The night the forest gave it to me, there was one condition. Not secrecy for shame, silence for protection. As long as no eye outside the agreement ever saw it, the thing stayed harmless. It provided without taking anything back. The price only came when you started looking. Every night you lay beside me listening for it, she continued. Every morning you watched how I moved. Every time you chose suspicion over trust, it grew stronger on that choice. You fed it with doubt, with pride. She stood straight. I did not uncover it, she said. You uncovered it the first night you chose not to believe me. She said it without cruelty, the way you say a true thing, carried too long in silence. The square held absolutely still. The spirit collected its debt the way deep water collects what falls into it, without drama, without hurrying. Odira stood in the center of the square and the village watched. His shoulders, always carried high and back, the posture of a man who knew his place, began to fall slowly forward, the way a wall settles when its foundation quietly gives way. His voice went first. He opened his mouth and sounds came, but they arrived without weight, words without conviction. Words that landed nowhere. And his name, when someone called Odira in the weeks that followed, he turned toward it. But there was always a pause, as if the name now had to travel a greater distance to reach the man it belonged to. Chief Ichianwu watched in silence until it was finished. When the spirit folded back into wherever it came from, he looked at the empty center of the square. Then he turned to the elders. Write this down, he said quietly. Let the grandchildren know what was lost here and why. Ugochukwu had left before the ending. No one called him back. The rest of Umudike stood in the cooling air and said almost nothing. What they had witnessed required no explanation. It was already complete. Chizum left Umudike 3 mornings later, before the village was fully awake. She carried only what fit in one hand and did not look back at the hut. Her mother walked with her to the edge of the path where the village ended. They held hands without speaking for a long time. When they let go, her mother pressed her palm against her daughter's cheek, the way their people do when words are not enough, when what you mean is, I see you. I am proud of you. Go well. Chizum walked. The bundle was gone. The debt was settled. The breathing had stopped for good. She was lighter than she had been in years. Not happy exactly, but unburdened in the way that only comes when you set down something never meant to be carried alone. She did not look back. Looking back at a finished thing teaches nothing new. What she carried forward was this. Silence is not always a woman hiding shame. Sometimes it is the only protection a person has for someone who would not understand the truth, even if it were placed in their open hands. Sometimes love does not look the way people expect. Sometimes it looks like a woman in the dark, arms wide, saying, "Do not come closer."